Senator Worrell, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise to make a contribution in this debate with regard to this sustainability-linked loan syndicated facility. I really listened carefully to the introductory remarks by the Honorable Minister who led off the debate. And to be honest, I was hoping that he would shed some more light for the people of Barbados on the terms and the conditions of this resolution, and possibly speak more to the resolution and less about matters which have long since passed in Barbados, because I believe it is time that the Barbados Labour Party government recognize that the need for adversarial politics in Barbados is not as important as the need for mature governance of this country.
Order, please. Order, please. Let us.
And
order.
I wish that they would take on mature governance of this country in the interests of the people of Barbados with a little bit more humility, given the fact that many people of Barbados are not up the beanstalk like Minister Blackman, but we are down here suffering. So we have not found any gold, but we are down here suffering. And I would have hoped that in introducing this piece of legislation, which could be of significant importance to the people of Barbados, as we are all concerned about the debt that this country is facing and the manner in which the Barbados Labour Party government has entertained debt restructuring over the years. We remember the debt restructuring which was done after 2018, and the way how it hurt significantly a number of institutions in Barbados because they were forced to take a haircut. One such institution is the National Insurance, which has lost over $1 billion in investment revenue as a result of the manner of the debt restructuring which was entertained by the Barbados Labour Party government. Our credit unions as well lost in excess of $34 million, to the extent that the bond market, the local bond market in Barbados has suffered because of their debt restructuring practices, that you cannot this day get a single person in Barbados to willingly buy bonds in Barbados with the appetite which they had prior to 2018. You cannot get it happening.
I want the rest until that.
Mr. President, sir, I raise on a point of order.
Yes, what's the point of order?
When
Yes, Senator Blackman.
Mr. President, sir, in my intervention I made it clear, and it's on the record now of the Senate, this transaction alone is $600 million. The mere fact that entities in the market have the confidence to do this with us speaks to the confidence that it has in Barbados. Let us now go to the local person. People are buying T-bonds and treasury bills, Mr. President, sir. There has never been a level of confidence in the economy of Barbados, particularly within the last 15 years, as it has. And I would encourage the Honourable Senator that when he speaks with a level of truth, Mr. President. I understand that the Democratic Labour Party and economy and truth don't go in the same sentence, but please proceed with truth.
Please proceed, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. He can try to convince the elderly persons who would have invested in bonds to supplement their pensions and lost those investments with the haircut which they were forced to take. That is a fact which he cannot deny or get up on another point of order to try to contradict. And that is the fact that I am making here today. Who will this debt restructuring hurt? And these are the things that the people of Barbados would like to hear from a government who is governing with maturity and humility, and who campaigned on a platform of transparency to come to the people of Barbados and lay clear for them all of the facts with regards to this resolution which is before us today. A resolution which I will say to you is very short on details, and it is very short on facts. And as I go through my presentation today, I would even encourage the Senate to go ask for additional information to be provided, which I hope that Senator Blackman would have provided to us today while we listened to him, but instead he roamed on and he rambled on, and he spent very little time touching and engaging this particular resolution.
I want to raise Senator Blackman.
I raise it on a point of order.
What is the point of order?
I want the public and the record to reflect. In my presentation, I outlined all of the details, the conditions precedent, everything that are akin or necessary in this transaction, all of them. I didn't leave out any. So let the record reflect that if the honourable member wants more information that I presented, then I don't know where I'm going to get it from. I've given the public all of the information necessary, as they will also see for the public records, that are part of the transaction.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. Senator Worrell, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. But the fact is, are those details in this resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I raise on a point of order.
What's the point of order?
The Honourable Senator is misleading the House. I believe the Honourable Senator was here earlier today when, as I opened the Senate, I laid as a document of this Honourable Chamber the sovereign guarantee contract between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank to enhance climate and financial resilience in Barbados. This is already a document of the House and therefore available to any member of the public to download online, including the honourable senators in this chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the Honourable Leader of Government Business did lay that before the House, it should have been provided to all senators.
I rise on a point of order.
What is the point of order?
There can be no if the Honourable Leader of Government Business laid it in the House. We were all present. I know that that was a display in the other place where things that were said were pretended not to be said, but we were all here when I laid it as a document of the House. So we cannot say if the Honourable Member laid it.
Thank you.
Senator Worrell, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me rephrase it. The Leader of Government Business just said to all of us senators here that a document that is critical to this debate was only laid in this chamber on this very day. And I can ask the senators take a poll, how many of them had the opportunity to peruse that document as they were preparing to come here to the Senate to give information on this resolution. That is the issue at hand right here today.
Mr. Chairman, I rise again on a point of order.
What is the point of order?
The Honourable Senator is misleading the House. If I were to quote the Honourable Senator directly, the Honourable Senator spoke about come to this Honourable Chamber and make available in the spirit of transparency on which we campaigned to the public of Barbados, the people of Barbados. And I have answered that we have laid it in this Honourable Chamber in the spirit of transparency for full perusal by the people of Barbados. If the Honourable Senator wishes to now make reference to the procedures internal to Parliament and the availability of the document for honourable members to peruse it in advance, that is a separate matter. But the matter on which I rose in response to the Honourable Senator was a question of public transparency of this party and laying documents in this chamber for the public of Barbados to see. And our record, again, on that is also second to none and is replicated here today.
Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Mr. President, as much theatrics and work that the Leader of Government Business will go through, the fact remains, the document was not shared with the members of the Senate, especially those on this side, the opposition and independents, when we were asked to consider this resolution for debate. And if it contained information which would help with the substance of this debate today, the government who had more than ample time that they could have made it available to everything. I still have not seen the document. It was laid, but I still have not seen it. I've requested it, and I still have not seen it. So that is my point with regard to the transparency and how Minister Blackman failed to touch this single piece of resolution. It almost seemed as though he was afraid to touch it, to contact it, to speak to it with any significance, because he knows, and well, not that he knows, but I'm wondering if there is something, if we have all of the information that we need in order to make an informed decision as to whether or not the passage of this resolution today will indeed benefit the people of Barbados in terms of being able to say that yes, our debt management is being handled in a prudent and efficient way that will not at any point in time jeopardize the interests of the people of Barbados who 20 years down the line will have to repay these loans.
Mr. President, sir, I raise it on point of order because to mislead the House is a dangerous thing. And to mislead the public, in my view, is an even more heinous act by anybody. And these things have implications far and wide, domestic and abroad. And I can understand if the senator simply got up and rose and said, Mr. President, I do not understand why I'm here on behalf of the Democratic Labour Party, but I can say something today and sit back down, as opposed to misleading the House. I walked through every single step of the process and the transaction. The resolution is laid here. Now say that you didn't read it. Don't hide behind quote unquote when it came. But I understand this, the Honourable Senator does not have a penchant for reading. That is not my fault, Mr. President, sir. But to mislead this House and to try to suggest that there's something in there that is not in the interest of the public is a lie. And I want to go on record and assure my fellow citizens that this is in your interest and all that's in it for you is there.
Senator Blackman.
Come with the truth.
Senator Blackman, you cannot accuse a fellow senator of stating a lie.
Mr. President, sir, I am humbly sorry for suggesting that he had lied to the public. But equally, I do not believe that he is a friend of the truth.
They will have the reference to the statement being a lie withdrawn, struck from the record and withdrawn. Senator Worrell, however, I did note that in the presentation of Senator Blackman, he not only spoke to the resolution, but there is an addendum concerning the terms and conditions, and he did articulate them for the record, the interest rate and the other details that are set out in the schedule to the resolution. So you cannot fairly accuse him of not speaking to the resolution. You may make additional requests for information if you so desire, but he did in fact read into the record the matters contained in the resolution and the addendum. Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I did read, I thank you for your clarification. I did read the terms and the conditions of the loan. But is that sufficient? Because, now, I would want to ask particular questions to the senator. Should the schedule not have provided more details to allow us to make a more informed decision on the merit of the swap? For instance, is this resolution, do we know which bonds we are swapping from this with this arrangement? And should that not be in here? We should not have to come into the House and listen and guess what bonds we are swapping out and at what interest rate. I know that Senator Blackman mentioned them, but what is binding is what is in this is what is in the resolution, and those should have been here so that as we peruse this, we can make an informed decision as to whether or not it benefits the country to actually swap out those loans. When is the maturity date for those loans? When will they be retiring? What is the quantum of saving? We should be able to look at it and not just hear from Senator Blackman that you're anticipating $150 million in savings. But you are asking legislators to take you at your word. It needs to be here in the document which we are about to pass. And then it would allow us to ask further questions. When you know about the quantum of savings, you can ask the question, wait, couldn't this money have been raised another way? Or couldn't we have just paid off that debt and raised the money in another way? And I would have mentioned, and I would have mentioned the fact that we no longer have, there's no longer any confidence in our bond market. But Mr. President, you would know, because you have been in this business for a long time, where governments, to finance projects such as the ones being financed, would have raised these bonds on the local market to allow for its citizens the opportunity to benefit from the interest payment from that investment. Though such bonds would have been offered, so couldn't that have been a consideration? If we had all the details, we would have been able to make an informed decision to determine if that may not have been another option. But we do know for a fact that the confidence in our local bond market is at the extent that, and I believe it is pointed out here in this guarantee, that only 3 banks, and 3 Canadian banks at that, are the ones willing to take part in this scheme, but I will come to that a little bit later. We also need to know in terms of the bunching of the loan repayments. It is all well and good to say that you have a grace period of 5 years in which you don't have to pay any interest or you don't have to pay back the loan, but we have to take into consideration when the loan is due, how many other loans will you have due at that particular point in time? Because the central bank will do for you a projection of your loan repayment schedule. And also a part of good debt management is to make sure that you schedule your loan repayment so that you do not find yourself in a particular year where you have a large amount of loans to repay. But again, that information is not really shared here. It may not need to be in the resolution, but it could have been offered by a mature government who was really concerned with good governance. It could have been offered then in that introductory remark. Next, Mr. President, we need to ask a serious question. Now, there's a lot of talk, and the jury is still out about whether it's an additional loan, if it is a new loan, whatever the case might be. I will, in my simple explanation, I will see it as going to the bank to refinance your mortgage. It means that you still have a mortgage to pay. So at the end of the day, if it is not a new loan or a refinance loan, it is still a loan that you have to pay at some point in time. So the jury is still out on that. But we need to ask the questions here because it is talking about a debt swap where higher interest loans are going to be bought back and lower interest loans are going to be issued. So who are the holders of the bonds being affected? If it was in the resolution, I will not have to come and ask this question. But that information should be here in the resolution. The series of the bonds, so that you would be able to say who would be affected. So I'm asking who would be affected by the bought back of these bonds and how much will they lose? Because when they did the debt restructuring with regard in prior to 2018, where White made millions of dollars in financing, and even the Financial Times was aghast at the amount of money that this government paid to White Oak to broker the financing. We know that our national insurance lost significant amounts of investment income. We know that the credit unions lost significant amount of investment income. We know that average bondholders in Barbados who are relying on those bonds to pay up enhance their retirement, were told they had to wait 15 years more for the maturity of those bonds. And as a result of that, they lost confidence in investing in government paper in this country. So who will be affected and how? And if early redemption, what are the implications, and will the national insurance be hit? I've asked that question already, so I'm looking forward to a response from Senator Blackman in his wrap-up on that. Now, there's also an issue of the question of the currency of this loan. And I'm going to be very careful with this, because I know that what is before us here is just one part of the resolution. It's almost as though we're not seeing the full picture. Because we're seeing one part of the picture which regards to a loan being taken out through the Special Loans Act, Cap 105 in Barbados dollars. But we heard other information about money coming from the IDB and money also coming from the European Investment Bank, I believe it is. So we wanted to know if a portion of this will not be financed by foreign currency. And if that is the case, let us know upfront. We know that this resolution here deals with Barbados dollars. But as I said, I don't believe that we're seeing the full picture. Because I would use as an example the debt for nature swap, which was done in I have the resolution here, done in 2022. Now why I say, and why I was curious that perhaps we don't have all the information here, because when that was done, there were two pieces of resolutions which were debated at the same time. There was the resolution to deal with the Special Loans Act Cap 105, which is what is before us today. But then there was also the resolution, the Debt Conversion Counter Guarantee Act 2022-12, a lengthy piece of resolution which contained information which I figured should have been here with this debate. So I'm wondering if this government will bring us back here at some point in time then to consider this resolution which deals with the same thing. So I am wondering, why was that not done? I go on further, because even though Senator Blackman said that he gave us the terms of the loan, I still do not know, and I do not see it in this resolution, what are the sustainability performance targets as it relates to this loan. And I think that that is a critical fact that should be in this resolution. Because I am not just being picky, I am not just being a troublemaker. It says here, for any period commencing after the first amount, SPT observation date, if the borrower fails to meet the sustainability performance targets by the immediately preceding SPT observation date, and amount payable in arrears equal to the product of A, the outstanding Barbados loan principal amount at the start of each loan interest period, B, the sustainability link rate, and I hope that you understand that I do read, and C, the Barbados loan day count fraction. Now, we do not know what these sustainability performance targets are, but we do know that they have consequences on the repayment of this loan. And I'm asking if a mature government who is governing do not think that that information should have been made available to the people of Barbados so that we can determine whether or not this government has the capacity to meet those implementation deadlines, because we know not just the Barbados Labour Party government, but subsequent governments in Barbados have an implementation deficit. Yeah. And it is critical. You want? if you want to jump on a point of order, it was nothing against you.
Not yet.
I am asking the question, Mr. President. I do believe that that information is critical information for us to make an informed decision on whether or not this loan is beneficial to the people of Barbados. I also go back to the 2022 loan. The 2022 loan. The sustainability performance targets are clearly outlined in that loan agreement. So what is the difference with this loan agreement today that Senator Blackman was afraid to touch, speak to, and address? Why can't Barbadians know the full extent of the loan agreement that they are getting into? That information should be provided by a government who claim that they have campaigned on a platform of transparency. Rise on a point of order.
Mr. President, I raise on a point of order.
What's the point of order?
The Honorable Senator is misleading the House. There's nothing about this transaction, nothing about this bill. I've repeated it, and I will rise each time that he does it, and I will say it again, that has not been disclosed, that is pertinent to this bill, that is in the interest of the public. Nothing at all has been hid. As a matter of fact, everything has been given above board, is there on the record for everybody to see. And as I said, Mr. President, I want to caution, because these things have implications for not me, the country. I understand he's way above his head, but so be it.
Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President, but he still has not addressed the issue. My point was that the resolution speaks to sustainability performance targets, and they carry a penalty if they are not met. We do not know what the sustainability performance targets are for this resolution. And to further back up my point, in a previous resolution which you did under the same debt for nature swap, which is quite similar, the targets were clearly outlined. So why could we have been treated to that information today as we were rushed here to consider this resolution? I want to go further in delving into just to give an example of some of the criteria which was in the 2022 resolution. Milestone 3, government approval of A, legislation and regulations to declare marine biodiversity protection zones, MPAs, and B, I believe that Dr. Crystal Jitz would know more about this, so she can probably elaborate on it. B, NSP institutional frameworks. But I want to read out some of the specifics of this, which should have been in this legislation. No later than 4 years and 6 months after the date of signing of the Convergence and Sustainability Commitment Agreement, the government shall approve the legislation and regulations that allow for the legal declaration, gazetting, and management of feasible marine biodiversity protection zones identified as part of the MSP's process. Now, for clarity for Barbadians, in the document, this marine zone is supposed to be 30% of our marine economic zone, which equates to approximately 55,000 square kilometers. Now, I am speaking on the point of implementation and management. I would honestly love to hear the government express to the people of Barbados, which, for comparison, land mass is 429 square kilometers, will manage a biodiversity protection zone of 55,000 square kilometers when you have or had a fishing industry with more than 500 boats operated independently by those captains who as long as they set sail from the harbor, will go anywhere in the economic zone of Barbados and fish. In order to police this zone, how do you intend to police 55,000 square kilometers being utilized by an independent fishing fleet of more than 500 boats who don't necessarily give a route that they're going to fish? So how are you going to protect it? I believe that there's a zone of whole town, which I don't even know if it's being adequately managed and protected, because the agency that's supposed to manage and protect it don't have the boats to do it. So how are you going to manage and protect 55,000 square kilometers of space with over 400 independent sailors in terms of fishermen? It has to do with the government being able to meet the objective in 4 years and not have to suffer a penalty on the loan which was taken. So I want to ask that question: what are the sustainability performance targets associated with this loan? I think it is a critical question which needs to be answered by the government, and let the people of Barbados know. The same way that you could have outlined it in a resolution in 2022, which was over 17 pages, and you have us here perusing a resolution of just 5 pages. To me, in my mind, it is short on information, and you are doing an injustice to the people of Barbados. You need to share accurate information with the people of Barbados. I give another example. That government over there gloated about the low interest...
Senator Worrell, I think you were mashing the creation and breach of the rules. You're suggesting, by urging the government to share accurate information, suggesting that they have shared inaccurate information, which I would urge you to withdraw. You may want additional information, but even if you think the information is insufficient, it by definition cannot be inaccurate. So you want to withdraw that, and you'll have it struck from the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm guided. And if I did say inaccurate information, I withdraw that. Insufficient information is what I meant. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. But I want to go on to make the point that I was making. Now, the Barbados Labour Party government gloated after their debt restructuring program about the low interest rates that they were paying on the loans. And then it is only last year that we were astonished to find out that those low interest rates were not fixed, but they were variable. And as a result of that, in 1 year alone, it costed the government over $150 million in additional loan repayments. Coincidentally, this government wants us to believe or to take at their word that this resolution would allow them a saving of $150 million. Now, if it is a situation where the same sustainability performance targets are not met, we could very well end up in a situation where we are faced to pay out some of that same money which we hope to save. So that is why that information is critical, so that Barbadians would know for a fact and with confidence that the affairs of this country are being properly managed. Now, we know that in the last, with those loans, that the government were eager. I think I could best read it out if Mr. President would allow me to make a quote. Were eager in terms of being able to come back and boast about these low interest rates, but they forgot to read the fine print. But if you share the information with us on this side, we're not as busy as you are. We will help you in reading the fine print, because we have the interests of Barbados at heart. We would help you in reading the fine print. We may even be better able to understand the fine print. So I urge the government to be upfront with the people of Barbados and bring all of the details. Don't let us learn after the fact, like we did in 2023, that the low interest rates were not fixed but variable. and costed us 150 million alone in 1 year. The same 150 million that that can potentially be saved here by not meeting one target could just like that be gone as well. So, Mr. President, it is important information that which needs to be shared with the people of Barbados. Now, we had a lot of talk about financing, $240 billion in immediate finance. I think Senator Blackman said $150 million in financing to the South Coast Sewage Project. He then wrapped it off to say it could be 110, but for safety, they would probably round it off at 120, and then the difference between the 120 and the 150 could go towards financing other projects. I would not want
to just for clarity though, the number is being cited. The $150 million in saving was $150 US. So perhaps you're indicating what Honorable Senator Blackman said, you may want to add the US for the accuracy of the record, so that 10 years from now it will appear as if they're different things.
Mr. President, I really cannot add US or Barbados to it because it should have been here in the document for me to quote from, and not necessarily for me to have to listen and to pick up. But it is not here in this document about where the other projects that will be financed out of the savings, as it is here in this document, the previous document. It is not here in this document. So I cannot go out on a limb to say that when he said 150 million, that it was Barbados or US dollars.
Senator Worrell, be guided. I'm just saying, you made reference to what the senator said, and I'm saying to you, the senator said 150 US. And therefore, if you're referencing him, if you're citing your own figures, that's fine. But saying if you're referencing the honorable senator, then you would need to cite what he cited.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the point is, that information should be here before us in a document so that we can peruse it and we would have the information. So if Senator Blackman said 150 million US dollars, I will quote the 150 million US dollars he said would be the savings from the loan. And then he went on to further say, with regard to the South Coast Sewage Project, it is anticipated it could come in at 110 million. I believe that would be US dollars again, or 110 million. I don't think a figure was quoted, but for safety, they would look at 120 million, and then the balance would go towards other projects, financing other projects. Why is that information not shared in a document for the people of Barbados so that we can vote on it in this resolution today, so that we do not have to be guessing as to what projects this resolution is intended to finance? I know that you may not have the contracts for all of them, but at least give us an idea of what those projects, the intended projects, so that we would know part of this on Cap 105 is that the funds must be allocated. Parliament must vote on how the funds are being spent. Right now we don't know. We have nothing here to say to vote on how these funds are being spent. We are going on the word of the minister, but it needs to be in the resolution so that we can say that 150 million US dollars was allocated to the South Coast Sewage Project and a tertiary treatment, upgrade to a tertiary treatment plant, and the Bridgetown Sewage Project to upgrade to a tertiary treatment plant. It should have been in this resolution or the subsequent resolution that should also go along with this debate so that we would know. And also, with regard to, we're speaking to 150 US dollars, but we are dealing with a Barbados dollar legislation. So something tells me that we are not seeing the full picture. Again, I come back to that. We are not seeing the full picture. Now, Mr. President, I want to go on to some other points with regard to this resolution and the conditions of the loan. In the past, with regard to certain loans, and this is a question that I'm asking, is there going to be a sinking fund attached to this loan? I see it nowhere here in this resolution, and also the percentage which will be allocated from the annually towards the sinking fund to go towards the repayment of this loan. I don't see it. The problem with this resolution, Mr. President, which makes it very difficult to support, is the resolution is too abbreviated to allow members of the Senate who do not sit on the government side and the wider public to make informed decisions. If the government is borrowing money, is the government borrowing money because they do not have the cash to pay off debt which is becoming due? That's a question which could be asked, because we don't know the maturity date of the debt which is being paid off. It could be debt which is maturing in 2025. We don't know that. And if it is that the government is going to debt restructuring for debt which is maturing in 2025, it signals that the government may not have the cash to pay off that debt. Those are questions which need to be asked. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I again repeat, with the previous debt restructuring, even the debt restructuring which was managed by White Oaks, Barbadians lost confidence in this government, because for you to come back and tell us you restructured debt and then had to pay $150 million that you did not expect, Barbadians lost confidence in the government. So do not expect us to take you at your word by bringing a 5-page resolution which is very short on information. We are a highly taxed country, and Barbadians cannot understand it that every time the Prime Minister leaves these shores, and she leaves every week almost, she returns with speaking about a different loan. But yet still we are highly taxed. We have the sewage tax on the water bills, and Barbadians would like to know how much that has generated and why couldn't that be used to deal with the South Coast sewage project, because they take pride in coming here 6 years after the fact to try to claim a victory with regard to the South Coast sewage project. And also bringing information which is not entirely accurate, because there is no way the South Coast sewage project was being worked on by the last administration. The boreholes were being dug while we were in office, and in 2018, there's no way by one magical switch that they were able to fix all of that. The Democratic Labour Party outlined what they were doing in fixing the South Coast sewage project. But you were collecting a sewage tax for 6 years, and you are now this day coming in here to boast that you are doing a vital thing of upgrading to a tertiary treatment plant. Where have you been spending the money from that sewage tax, which is a burden for many Barbadians? That could have been applied to the project, and the project could have been done ever since. We also want to ask the question as well, and we wonder if it would not affect this first debt for nation squat. What are the nitrate levels in the water off the west coast of Barbados? And when will you come in here and speak about a west coast sewage plant? Those are the things that you need to come in here and boast about, because the nitrate levels off the west coast of Barbados are high. And if you are talking about a debt for nature policy which asks you to secure the biodiversity of our oceans, and you know for a fact that you have sewage flowing in freely off the South Coast, you have a West Coast which does not have a sewage treatment plant, and the nitrate levels off the West Coast are rising, and you are not speaking about it, and you are not doing anything about it. Tell us what information you have with regard to that, and how it would affect the first loan.
I want to raise something about it.
Mr. President, so I raise on a point of order.
And what's the point of order?
In my own parliament, I will raise on a point of confusion.
No, there's no such point. What's the point of order?
But, Mr. President, sir, in my presentation this morning, I made it very clear that it is not just about the economy, it is not just about the health, it is also about the environment. And I also spoke to the fact that the government is paying particular attention to the environment, because wrapped up in there is the issue of ensuring that there's longevity of our waters, in the context particularly of building out a blue economy. And of course, when you look at the whole things of nitrates and all that, it was there. In a circumstance where for 10 years between 2008 and 2018, they paid nothing about nitrates or nothing. So to not be lectured is disingenuous, shameless, scandalous at best.
Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Also, there are certain things, if you're talking about the environment as well, I would like to ask a question. Have any of the cruise ships which damaged the reef off of Barbados entered any agreement to repay the country for the damage caused to those reefs so that we can restore the reefs? You can answer that question as well. Now, I do not understand the beanstalk that Senator Blackman climbed up and the country that he visited then, but it does not relate to what average Barbadians are feeling in this country. Average Barbadians are feeling absolute hardship. Today, while driving here, you got the news that 2 schools in Barbados closed today. Springer Memorial School and Ada Costin Edwards schools closed. Every week in Barbados, or almost every single day in Barbados, different schools are closing. And you want to tell me that this is a government that is properly managing the affairs of this country?
Yeah. Mr. President, I raise on a point of order. First of all, Mr. President,
What's the point of order?
I want to plead and ask that the member, first of all, sticks to the resolution at hand. And of course, no.
Did you say that?
Mr. President, I'm speaking to you as the President, sir, and I would also encourage, as I have encouraged, as I've done in addressing the honourable member, as the honourable member, notwithstanding my own view, and not he, Mr. President, this is not George Street, this is not a fete, this is not a backyard, this is the Senate of Barbados. This is the Senate of Barbados, where a level of dignity and posture is required, and it is the history of this great institution. This is no rah-rah place, Mr. President, sir.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. It is within the scope of the chair to give discretion. If I think that the discretion is stretching the envelope, I pull it back. But I give senators have the flexibility to use examples, and I'll determine when they go outside of the scope of relevance.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I was saying, Mr. President, Senator Blackman in his introduction...
Order, senators, please.
Senator Blackman in his introduction to this debate went far and wide to give the impression that this country was properly managed and everybody in Barbados were floating on cloud 9. But I just wanted to bring him down off of the beanstalk back to reality to let him know that people in Barbados are not happy. Because we recognize that a government, every time the Prime Minister leaves, she comes back with a different loan, even after doing a debt restructuring. So instead of being able to say that we are reducing our debt, we are happy now to say we're keeping our debt constant. Instead of being able to say that we are reducing our debt, we are happy to trumpet that we're keeping our debt constant, as if Barbadians don't know that this is actually still another loan.
Mr. President, I love to raise on a point of order, Mr. President.
What's the point of order?
I really hate to interrupt the Honourable Senator, but I've allowed it to go many times. The Honourable Senator has said multiple times, every time the Honourable Prime Minister leaves the country, she comes back with another loan, and has been talking about these other loans as opposed to the fact that after we have done a debt restructuring, why all these loans. The Honourable member is well aware of the fact that when this government came to office, the debt was unsustainable. The country, Mr. President, was about to face one of the very loans that the honorable member spoke about that was about to come due, that would have depleted the country's foreign reserves and would have put us in a position where the dollar would have been devalued, and the debt restructuring was a direct consequence of that fact. This fake news that continues to perpetuate outside is one thing, but this is the Honorable the Senate. And I think that the Honorable member, while he may be deluding, maybe attempting, I don't want to be unparliamentary, but while the Honorable member may be attempting to wax poetic with the facts, there are a number of entities, including a company called Credit Suisse, with a loan as of 2018 that would dispute much of what the Honorable member is now saying. And so the loans that the Honorable Prime Minister has been able to get, yes, at lower interest rates, are to refinance debts incurred under the Democratic Labour Party and mismanaged under the Democratic Labour Party. Let there be no pretense about that and how they stand in this place, Mr. President, and attempt to wax philosophical as if they have had a different experience between the rest of our business. It's unreal.
Thank you very much, Senator Cummins. Senator Worrell, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I go on to say, every time the Prime Minister leaves, she comes back with a different loan. And if you want to give us the impression that you have reduced the loan, the debt burden in 2024 should not be more than what it was in 2018. I go on.
And what do you have to indicate your
Yes, Mr. President, I raise on a point of order.
What's the point of order?
Speaking now, not just as the leader of the debate, but as the Minister for Economic Affairs. The honourable member is misleading the House that in this year, that the debt burden of the country is more than under the Democratic Labour Party, and nothing could be further than the truth. The debt to GDP ratio is on a downward trend, Mr. President, sir. And notwithstanding the fact that debt has increased, the economy has gotten larger, and our ability to service the debt is now much stronger, and Barbados is no longer the third most indebted country in the world as it was under the honourable member's time. Those are the facts. Speak it.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. In September, the total debt in Barbados was 14.9 million. You can go billion. You can go back to the Central Bank report and tell me what the total debt was in 2018. But I go on. As much as they would want to give the impression the quality of life for Barbadians at this stage is less, it is poor, because Barbadians don't have the confidence to go to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital or any healthcare institution in this country and expect to get good service. And I can tell you that up until 2019, when they had a good manager in the form of Dr. Dexter James, Barbadians had more confidence in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It was better run and it was better managed, and you did not hear as much complaints on the call-in programs about people waiting days in accident and emergency just to see a doctor. You could rise on a point of order if I am wrong. If I am wrong. But to this day, it is a nightmare for Barbadians to go, and you are talking about...
Senator Worrell, I will not raise.
Thank you.
I will remind you that the quality of service at the hospital is not germane to this resolution. I give lots of latitude, but there's a difference between, going down a side road and turning in the opposite direction. Please be guided.
Mr. President, I was just trying to match Senator Blackman with some of the latitude that he took on one side, so I will continue. But you cannot deny the fact that what is happening within our school system under a government which has access to low interest loans is deplorable. That many schools only received a few weeks ago the monies which is necessary to run those schools, which should have been there from September 1st, and they only received them in the 7th week of the school term. And you cannot tell me that this is not contributing to some of the environmental challenges which many of those schools are facing. You have the schools crying out for security guards, that this government promise would be there, and they're giving you the impression that this is a government that has managed the financial affairs of this country so well, but cannot afford to pay for security guards to be at the schools to secure not only the students, but also the teachers as well, who are fearful. These are the things that we need to talk about. And we talked about garbage and sanitation, but what about the fact that up to this day there are communities in Barbados who have not had a garbage collection for more than 3 weeks? And when you pass through some communities, you have to hold your nose because of the stench from the garbage that has been left there. But this is a government that is trying to give you the impression that they are managing the financial affairs of this country well, but cannot pay to get the garbage trucks at sanitation fixed, cannot pay to get some of the bush cleaned up around the schools, so that maybe that will reduce the incidents with the bees. When it comes to January, we'll then have the issue. The 2 schools that, Mr. President, for your information, 2 schools were closed today because of bees. Springer Memorial School and A. DeCosta Edwards. We have to wonder if this may not be due to the accumulation of bush around the schools, which makes it their farm, the beehives. But the bush, you guys rise on a point of order on that?
Mr. President, I raise a point of order. Notwithstanding, it may seem trite and little to suggest to the public that the schools in question today were closed as a result of dereliction of, environmental care is not true. Nature, bees thrive on pollen. Has nothing to do with bush. Has nothing to do with overgrown bush, Mr. President. And in the interest, of course, I don't know all of the details, and I'll say that. But of course, in the safety of our children, are vulnerable, it is the wise thing to do. Nature, like other parts of the environment, we cannot compete with. And I believe that that is one circumstance. But to now make it a partisan thing, oh dear, that's a stretch, Mr. President.
Please continue, Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And you have 1 minute to conclude.
Including all these interruptions? Thank you, Mr. President. But
the standing order, as you know, do permit interruptions on points of order, and they are part and parcel of debate in the chamber.
Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm just making the point that a government that wants to give Barbadians the impression that they have managed the debt of this country to such an extent that that we should be doing better, we should be seeing better. All we are seeing is high taxes in this country, which is increasing the cost of living and which is also eroding the performance of a number of sectors in Barbados. Tourism in Barbados is a classic example because we lag in terms of our tourism numbers when compared to our Caribbean neighbors. And it has to do with the high cost of living here in this country and the tax burden which this government has imposed on the tourism industry. All of these taxes which are necessary to pay these loans. And I would want to wrap up, Mr. President, by saying this resolution is short on details, and I ask the rest of the Senate to question one major aspect of it, those sustainability performance targets which are lacking in this resolution. Because if we do not know what they are, we cannot know what penalties this country is likely to face down the road. And the $150 million US which theoretically we will be saving, can be easily eroded if those targets are not met. And this government should have come to this chamber with all of the information so that Barbadians with some confidence can say, well, yes, we make an informed decision that all of the facts are there and that we can work out and say, well, yes, I can see how the $150 million in savings will come. We don't know what debt is going to be repaid. are rolled over, we don't know the maturity date, and we do not know how our debt will be bunched or bundled for repayment down the road. All of these are critical facts that should be here before us today in order to give support to this resolution. And I say something is missing, something is lacking, and it may be a good idea, but good things poorly implemented turn out wrong. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Worrell.